Hey, what's up guys? Justin Ochoa here, Pace Fitness Academy. Today we're starting a brand new series called the Basketball Breakdown, where we're gonna look at highlight plays from a strength and conditioning perspective and a movement-oriented perspective, and talk about some of the things that you can do in the weight room to get more out of your on-court play. So take a look at the video coming up and make sure you stay tuned weekly for more videos. All right guys, today we're gonna be looking at this Brad Beal play, which is a between the leg snatch into a step back, nice little mid-range jumper that he hit. So I'm gonna play it in real time, and then we'll go back and break down some of the specifics.
Myers Leonard picking up Beal on the switch. Oh, the step back. Oh, that's lethal for Bradley.
So that's a tough move, especially being a big guy guarding a guard. This is you're not gonna end up stopping this most times. So a couple things you want to pay attention to. First thing, just from a basketball perspective, is Beal does a great job of reading the defender. So Leonard is kind of trying to stay with him. Then it gets into a little bit of an elevated position. His center of mass is raised. So as a ball handler, you read that. And what do? You do the opposite. If they're raising their center of mass, you're going to drop yours. So now you have a movement advantage. You're going to drop your center of mass. You're going to decelerate or get into some kind of move and then attack from there. So what Beal does is a nice deceleration step here. So we're going to talk about this concept of knee valgus, knee collapse, versus what actually is often happening, which is a hip internal rotation and a foot pronation. So if you look at this position here, a lot of people might think this is a dangerous position for the knee. You might hear the word valgus or collapse, or, say that he's at some kind of risk. But if you look at the components that allow him to get in this position, it's actually really safe. You got a hip internally rotated. You got a foot pronated. What's in the middle of the hip and the foot is our knee. So if our knee is supported by our ankle or our foot and our hip, we're probably in a good position. So in this specific case, he's totally fine. His tibia and his femur are working together. They're in synergy. They're not going opposite directions. So his knee is at no risk. He's actually in a pretty good position to decelerate. And then he takes a gather. He could have really stepped back off of that foot, but he takes a little gather while Myers does whatever he's doing, and then steps back again, pushing off that right, which, again, this is a really natural play. Even on the left leg, we're going to look at that as well. Same components. It's hip IR, pronation. You see it just pop back out. It's just rotating in and out, which is a natural free movement. But where you could go wrong is not having the structures and capacities in place to be able to get in this position in such a dynamic sport environment. So Beal probably has some good hip strength. He probably has some good hip mobility. He probably has good ankle strength, good ankle mobility. But most of all, he has this skill down. He's practiced this move, and he knows he's able to do this because this is something that is a sport-specific skill and special strength type of thing that he's been able to accomplish. And so while I don't know he needs to practice this in the weight room under load by any means, I think that he's strong enough and mobile enough to be able to do this move with no consequences whatsoever. So, but what I want to point out is on the other end of this play, there's a defender, right? And this defender actually goes into what I would say is knee valgus, versus Beal is more of a hip internal rotation, a little pronation of the foot. That's a safe position. If you look at Leonard here, we're going to watch his right knee, the one in the sleeve. We're going to look at, in this position here, this is not a bad position if you're going to stop and try to reaccelerate in another direction. But what happens is, if you're watching, his toes are square to the out-of-bounds line. His knees are also square to the out-of-bounds line. His hips are square to the out-of-bounds line. That right there is a decent position. But if you watch his knee right here, his right knee cave in. So that, I'm going to circle that so you guys can get a nice look at it. Cave. That is what I would say is more of a knee valgus than a hip internal rotation, because I don't think his hip internally rotates and I don't think his foot pronates. I think he finds the middle and backside inside edge of his shoe rather than more around the big toe. So to me, that would be classified as more of a knee valgus or knee cave that was caused by such a sick move. And then, of course, I mean, he hits a dab right there. So anytime you're dabbing as a defender, that's never good. You don't want to be there. So we're looking at two different things here. And you can see one worked out for one and the other didn't work out for the other. So when you're thinking about sports and you think about weight room movements, they don't need to look similar. They don't always have to look similar. Oftentimes, they won't look similar. What you're trying to do in the weight room is build the structure and achieve the capacity to be able to get into your sport-specific positions without further risk or pain. And that's what we saw here today. We saw Beal get into a specific position that his foot and hip allowed him to get into, while Leonard was forced into a position that was less optimal for his knee health. And I think he's fine. I don't think he's hurt, but I think it's definitely a more disadvantageous position than what Beal got into. So that's our basketball breakdown for today. Thank you for listening to me rant for 7 minutes. I'll catch y'all later.